In cultural discourse, polarized viewpoints are what drive viewership and engagement. So much so that it is becoming the norm with how we discuss almost any topic, and we have to be intentional if we want to avoid such polarization. We see divisive content on various topics such as video games, food, books, politics, social issues, religion, and basically anything. One cornerstone of Western culture has been Christianity. How might the now standard climate of division play out in this space? Paul Schrader's 2017 film First Reformed explores the tensions and division that infected Christianity. In addition, it reveals how Christianity, once too many viewed as synonymous with Western culture and specifically the United States, is now viewed in the eyes of those entering the post-secular age. So what does this movie about a lonely, troubled priest, eco-terrorism, and religious infighting have to say? Let's explore that. Welcome to Analysis with Alex, your online media studies and literature classroom. My wife Grace joins me during this series to bring her background in sociology to our analysis of films and events that explore the emerging post-secular age.
First Reformed focuses on Ernst Toller and his crisis of faith. The Dutch Reformed Church he ministers, which has a dwindling congregation, is approaching its 250th anniversary. During this time, Toller counsels a troubled young man named Michael who is deeply involved in environmental activism, which is later revealed to extreme ends. Michael's hopelessness and following suicide shake Toller to his core and ignite a journey for Toller through spiritual and social division. Toller begins to question the church's role in the world, namely the future generation in environmentalism. First Reform follows the tensions and strife this journey reveals over the following days leading up to the church's reconsecration. It's no secret that the history of the church is riddled with division, beginning with the East-West Schism in 1054 to the founding of Protestantism in 1517, with Martin Luther's public questioning on how the Catholic Church functioned. Now, Christianity has the most denominations of any other major world religion. Within the 6 major denominations, there are countless theological differences ranging from something minute to something that could almost be totally different religion. If you've had any experience with attending church buildings, you'll find that many Christians of any denomination will claim those of other denominations are following the world's culture, not really a Christian, or that they are intentionally misleading others through heresy, a bit off from the unified vision given by biblical instruction. Whether or not these previous splits were necessary, Christianity has further split so much that even without changing denominations, we will refer to some as fundy or evangelical, often as in a negative context. Just to give an example of how people within one denomination can still be split. Capitalism likely influences how the church functions as well. As Christians become more divided, the need to compete with the church down the street by gaining more memberships, obtaining a larger building, having more community events, etc., becomes the primary goal in many cases instead of the spiritual growth and general livelihood of the congregation.
These roots of capitalist attitudes are more profound than we might assume. In his book, The Enchantments of Mammon, How Capitalism Became the Religion of Modernity, historian Eugene McArthur outlines how the settling Puritans of the United States intertwined these ideas with their theology. Quote, "In the Puritan gospel of capitalist enchantment, wealth was God's benediction on the righteous, a reward from the Almighty to the archangels of improvement. Among the many ways God enabled his saints to plainly see his providence, Puritans pointed to the profit acquired from business pursued for merchandise and gain's sake. New England was never inhospitable to the entrepreneurial spirit. Both rural and urban family producers engaged in surplus production for the market from the earliest days of colonialization. The Puritan clerisy saw no fundamental conflict between diligence and grace, savvy investment and reliance on faith, possessive individualism, and predestined redemption. A city on a hill was a palace of wealth and an abode for the elect, a place where Christian proprietors could procure what John Higginson pronounced the blessings of time and eternity.
These factors caused Christianity in Western culture to be highly independent and competitive. Schrader, a self-professed Christian, and his crew seem to be aware of this issue, as during Reverend Toller's and Esther's lunch together, the shot reveals the setting in the background to display the verses Acts 2:44 through 47 in the New Living Translation, which states, "And all the believers met together in one place and shared everything they had. They sold their property and possessions and shared the money with those in need. They worshiped together at the temple each day, met in homes for the Lord's Supper, and shared their meals with great joy and generosity.
Keeping these points in mind, it's important to remember that since Schrader himself is a Christian, it's not likely that his criticisms are to indict all churches, but to point out unhealthy behaviors that have veered from the original text. There are many different churches throughout Western culture that get a lot right, but that doesn't mean we also don't have our issues that should be addressed. First Reform uses the choice of set design to create an interesting juxtaposition when compared to the discussion happening between Reverend Toller and Esther, where one of the donors needs to be publicly praised for his generous giving. A sense of individualism and competition can also lead people, including many within the church, if not most, to believe that they are consistently correct in their opinions. This feeling often leads to further divisions within something meant to be a unified body. While this would seem like it may make sense, not healthily addressing disagreements can lead to some extremist ideologies that often wildly vary from what's actually written in the Bible. This is reflected further in the scene where Reverend Toller attends a small group discussion with teenagers. Reverend Toller states that Jesus showed no indication that one would inherently experience better financial or physical predicaments because of the choice to follow him. Religion quickly devolves into a teenager's frustrated extremism where he states, "We should all be losers." The displays of extremism plays into First Reform cinematography and how it makes the viewer feel about the conversations and events they witness.
Other significant elements of division that the movie points to are rigid worldviews and perspectives. Schrader and his crew use a 1.33 to 1 aspect ratio for the movie. This choice causes the shots to block everything into a tight space, as if we were trying to capture everything these characters stand for in a simple box that they are trying to break out of. The camera work is often rigid, still, and steady, though revealing austere and beautiful images. In addition to its rigid boxy aspect ratio and cinematography, First Reformed uses expertly blocked dialogue scenes to reveal more about how division in the church plays out for all involved. By blocking, I mean how the film arranges the characters in a dialogue scene in relation to each other and to the objects around them.
For example, the diner scene with Reverend Toller, Pastor Jeffers, and Ed Balk shows how each character feels about each other and their relationship. Jeffers remains on the other side from both men, talking about the business of the reconsecration. He is presented in an almost transactional way between Toller and Balk. Toller, on the other hand, is pushed into a claustrophobic corner by Balk, who dominates the table once he arrives. The booth is almost uncomfortably small and makes Toller seem small and trapped when Balk spreads his arms across the tiny table. The blocking helps us feel how Toller's comments about the church's role in the world and his concern about the state of humankind are pushed to the side, much like he is in this scene. This scene hints at some conversations occurring within the post-secular space, as the lines between spirituality, religion, politics, and belief are ever shifting and merging together more and more. As a quick aside, it's just fun that Schrader and his crew only made Ed Balk eat during this scene, and he orders apple pie, because, you know, what's more American than apple pie? That's just fun.
The blocking First Reform uses is also vital for its exploration of division in the church and humankind more broadly, as it uses similar techniques in its two mirrored spiritual counseling scenes, the first between Toller and Michael, and the second between Toller and Jeffers. Both scenes feature a man consumed by hopelessness that is fixated on climate change, while another man attempts to speak biblical truths into his life but misses the mark of what they share.
Can God forgive us? For what we've done to this world?
I don't know. Who can know the mind of God? But we can choose a righteous life, belief, forgiveness, grace covers us all. I believe that.
While trying to address the despair of another, Toller and Jeffers both miss the opportunity to address the truth of protecting God's creation and taking care of the world, as they are more concerned with their relation and perspective of the person in front of them. This in turn causes them both to fail to recognize the person in front of them as part of God's creation. It is as if God has worked out these moments to reveal the necessary work in front of these characters to help those in the immediate surroundings. The more significant issue in both of these scenes is the failure of genuine, true spiritual connection and the true help between church members, no matter their differences, perspectives, or ideas. This idea is more so confined to Toller and Jeffers' encounter, as Toller and Michael's relationship extends the problem to a lack of connection and help for other people broadly.
Though many post-secular texts can be altogether hopeless, First Reformed is not as hopeless as it might seem on the surface. The film shows many of its characters as a warning, especially Reverend Toller, but also shows hope and a solution through the character of Mary. Toller's warning is how the standing operating procedure of established institutions has failed his need for love and meaning. Recall that this was a major cornerstone of post-secularism as explored in our previous video. It shared that Toller initially held allegiance to his country and served in the military until his country failed him through a senseless war that took the life of his son.
You need someone to take care of you.
Esther, we tried that. I'm not made for that.
For what? Love? You're not made for love?
My marriage was a failure.
No marriage can survive the loss of a child.
It's not right.
The theme of America as an institution failing is reflected again in an expertly blocked and designed scene where Toller serves veterans in a soup kitchen. In short, Toller is positioned the way many are feeling in the current post-secular age. He then approaches serving God via the church as his next step, but it should be noted that Toller is more focused on serving the institution of the church in the same way he did his country. Yet, what he finds is still meaningless. This tension is revealed through Toller's struggle to pray.
This leads to another part of Toller's warning: communication. We are given insight into Toller's mind through First Reformed's use of voiceover in the movie's conclusion. Even from the opening, Toller's voiceover is concerned about communication, as he desires for the thoughts in his journal to become some kind of prayer. We get a sense that division and strife have cut Toller so deep he struggles to even see how simple, direct prayer can be accomplished. Though the viewer gets insight into Toller's struggles, he never broadcasts them to the other characters. Other characters rarely approach him in a manner he feels he can broadcast them, so the viewer is left with a sensation of frustration over this communication breakdown. However, Toller is a complicated character whose true motives are shown through the movie's conclusion. Once Toller is aware he will die, he quickly turns to violent retribution against the institution of religion that has failed him, lashes out at one person that desires to show him love, and reveals his intention behind his relationship with Mary to be self-focused and sexual. These things do not discredit Toller in his trials, but Schrader and his crew show that Toller is just as human as anyone else. We also make the case that these events may or may not happen, given Schrader's tendency in his filmography to conclude movies in a fever dream-like state. Namely, Taxi Driver is one of his most famous scripts that presents an ambiguous ending about whether or not it is actually happening. Either way, it reveals something about the central character. Though Mary is presented as a selfish point of desire for Toller in First Reformed's conclusion, she is presented as a possible solution to the issues of division and hopelessness throughout the rest of the movie. Towards the film's end, a distinction drawn between Mary and Michael, as Mary states she is spiritual and Michael is not. In addition, Mary becomes the first person to ask for genuine spiritual help in the film when she asks for help praying before she leaves for Buffalo. During this strange magical mystery tour scene, Mary is perhaps the one that brings the images of creation and hope into the background before the images transition into ones of destruction and despair as Toller reveals his face.
Throughout all these scenes and Mary's interactions across the movie, Mary maintains a sense of peace compared to others. In short, Mary takes on the current circumstances that God has placed her in and takes them head on with hope and a spiritual walk that invites others into it. This situation is very much like what her biblical name alludes to, as Mary, the mother of Jesus, was also a pregnant young woman placed into challenging and uncertain circumstances, balancing hope and despair. Mary presents a solution to elements rising from the shift from the secular myth to post-secularism by adopting a spiritual walk, inviting others into it with openness and love, a non-sexual love from her perspective, and accepting difficult circumstances with hope, so much so that she vows to continue humanity into an uncertain future, being secure in knowing that God's creation, both us and the world, will persevere in some manner beyond our understanding. Thank you so much for watching this video. Do you agree with our interpretation of First Reformed? What else did you get from this deeply layered and rich movie? Please let us know in the comments and start a discussion around it. If you enjoy content like this and in-depth book reviews, please subscribe to this channel and join up for more future explorations. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in future explorations.